Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hello from Ireland. I am here with a pretty fantastic group of ladies, and we are currently in Dublin, just at the beginning of our tour here on the Emerald Isle, and we're going to be heading to Galway tomorrow, then on to the remote Aran Islands, before we head down the beautiful and dramatic west coast of the country. It's the Wild Atlantic Way, as it's called. So we are in store for some spectacular scenery and some pretty amazing activities. And just in a few days, we've already taken a cooking class. Some of us took a silver ring making class, and there will be knitting and soda bread making and pottery making. And gosh, just so much to see and do in just a couple of weeks. Now, I don't have a set of dates for our next Ireland tour, but I'm already excited about returning. And if you are interested in coming to Ireland with me next time, send me a note at beth@shesboldpodcast.com, and I'll get you on the list to be alerted for my next trip. And if you want to see photos of how much fun we're having, check out my Facebook page. That's where I mostly post stuff. Also, while I'm talking about tours, I also have a few spots on the Morocco tour in February of 2020. Now, I have a feeling those few spots are going to go pretty fast because a number of the ladies on this trip here in Ireland are already talking about joining me in Morocco. So you should register pretty quickly, as those spots may not last long. And that is a women-only tour. Morocco, February 2020. Okay, so today's guest is Mina Yoo. Mina is the founder of HeroClip, and this is a super handy device that combines a carabiner with a hook. So you can take your purse, your backpack, your water bottle, pretty much an endless number of things, and you can hang that item on a hook. You can hang it on a tree branch, a fence post, pretty much an endless number of things in order to keep your hands free. Now, I actually brought two of these with me here to Ireland, and I've already been using one of them. It's just clipped right onto my backpack, so it makes it easy. I can hang it up pretty much anywhere. You'll hear Mina describe it and how it came about, and it'll make a lot more sense. My brief description here isn't great, but you'll hear all about that. I'll also include an image and a video of it in the show notes on the She's Bold podcast website, so you can check it out further, and you'll get a much better picture of exactly what this is. Anyway, in this conversation, you'll hear Mina's story of how the HeroClip came about and how that experience, being a creator and inventor, then gave her the idea of her new book. Now, her new book she co-authored with Hilary Meyerson, and it's due out on October 22nd, coming up just in the next week. And it's called Be an InventHer. Not inventor, InventHer. It's awesome. And every woman's guide to creating the next big thing. So in this conversation, we talk about the book, we talk about the HeroClip, but we also talk about the reality of juggling all of this because Mina's pretty busy. And we talk about what it's like for her to be an overextended parent and the guilt that's associated with trying to juggle a business and being a wife as well as a mother to two children. And we go into how men are treated differently with regards to juggling the work-life balance and the different societal expectations for women and men. It's really an interesting conversation, really interesting perspective on this. We also talk about taking the leap of faith, as Mina did when she left a very secure job as a university professor to jump into the unknown to launch this business. Let's just say Mina is super inspirational. With that, I just know you are going to love this conversation with Mina Yoo. Hopefully, if you've got a little idea that's percolating about something, you'll pick up her book. And hey, maybe you'll be on the podcast next. Until then, enjoy this conversation with Mina Yoo. You said that you actually lived in Indonesia. Like, how old were you when you lived in Indonesia?
I was there from the ages of 10 to 16.
10 to 16. Wow, pretty formative years to be there. It was Jakarta, right?
It was Jakarta.
That's a pretty big city.
It's huge, and I went to an international school, and so it was pretty insulated. And kind of looking back now, I mean, it was like literally walled off from the neighborhood. And, I didn't know better at the time. Like, my parents were trying to get us the best education and experience possible, and it was an awesome school. But I kind of looking back, I wish there had been more interaction, with the community.
At international schools, do they generally teach you in English?
So our school was pretty cool in that we had like an AP system, which would be the American system. And then we also had international baccalaureate. So all the classes were taught in English except for the language classes. But it was heavily influenced by the US. Like I think most of the teachers, well, maybe not most, maybe like 40, 50%. The vast majority of the teachers were from the US. But what was awesome was that we had kids from like every walk of life. Yeah.
So did you learn any other languages, like just through osmosis because you were there with a bunch of other
Sure.
children?
So when I moved to Dubai, I was 6, and my parents ended up sending us, my sister and I, to a Lebanese international school where all the kids spoke English, French, and Arabic perfectly.
Oh my gosh.
And my sister and I spoke none of them.
Yeah.
So that's where we started learning a language other than Korean for the first time. And then in Indonesia, we were required to learn Indonesian. So we did that and continued our French. And
So your background is Korean, is that right? Were you weren't born in Korea, were you?
I was.
Born in Korea.
Moved to Dubai.
Yeah.
Then Indonesia. And then I came to the US for college.
Fascinating. Wow. What a life.
Yeah, I feel really lucky.
Yeah. What did your parents do that you were traveling around?
My dad worked for a multinational company, a Korean multinational, so he was posted in different countries. And when my sister and I were in college in the US, he actually was posted in Poland just in the late 90s. So we got to travel there quite a bit and see Eastern Europe and all the changes that were taking place after socialism. So that was really cool too.
Is he still with that same company?
No, he retired a while back. Yeah.
And where does he live now?
He actually 6 months ago just moved to Federal Way.
No kidding.
Yeah. So my mom was like, "Oh my God, this is the first time in 30 years that we're living in the same city or like kind of the same city."
Yeah.
I mean, like literally.
Where's your sister?
My sister's in New York.
Oh gosh. So what brought them to Federal Way?
Well, they were living in Korea and they only have 2 kids and we're both so far away and they were spending like 6 months a year in the US anyway. And, they just wanted to be closer to us and their grandkids. And they actually have a ton of friends in the Seattle area and in New York. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So almost bi-coastal. They probably spent a lot of time in New York.
That's right. So they just spent a month there and just got back.
Yeah. And how old? You have one child or?
I have 2,
You have
8
2,
and 6.
8 and 6. Boy, girl?
The older one is a boy. He's in 3rd grade. His name is Kai. The younger one is Mila. She just started 1st grade.
Oh, beautiful. Oh my gosh. Great names. I love that.
Thank you.
So that's fantastic. So grandma and grandpa
Exactly.
are nearby.
Totally. They love it too.
Yeah. Well, that must help out quite a bit with you because you're involved in so much right now.
I am.
Like you're birthing kids and you're birthing a business and now you've got a book coming out like really soon. Like by the time this airs, your book will either just be coming out or it will have come out like on the same day. So yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
To all of that.
I saw that we already have a few reviews through the Amazon Vine program where they get advanced copies.
No kidding.
Yeah, and pretty good reviews.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, we're pretty stoked.
Yeah, right on. Well, let's first jump into, we'll get to the book in a minute, but let's first jump into your product because it's really more like your product launched the book. Is that right?
Yes.
The experience with
exactly.
that. So the HeroClip, it's actually really interesting because when I saw the video of it, at first, and really, I would encourage listeners to go to the She's Bold podcast website, and in the episode notes, I'll actually in the show notes, I'll actually put a photo of it so people know what it is. Maybe if I can embed that video, I might do that as well because it's a pretty cool video. But it at like first glance, you think, well, it's a carabiner. And then when you see how it works, it's like, oh my God, this is like I was just out the other night and I could have used something exactly like this. Or when I traveled I'll explain more how I could have used it after you. Why don't you explain to listeners the difference between a carabiner and the HeroClip?
Sure. And if it's okay, I'd love to start out with how I came up with the idea.
Please.
Yeah. So basically, several years ago when I had my kid, Kai, so that was 8 years ago already, I had him, my first child, and then I decided to summit Mount Rainier to get back in shape.
Had you summited Rainier
before?
No,
never. So this was like, I'm a kind of person who needs like goals. Yeah. So that was my goal. I signed up in March. My kid was 3 months old. And I was doing a lot of training hikes with weighted backpacks. And at the same time, I'm taking my kid out all the time. And I realized that I was lugging a ton of stuff all the time. And oftentimes there just wasn't a good place to set it down, like public restrooms when you're changing the kid. And then on the mountains, this is March in, Washington, it's pretty muddy. I would set my backpack down and then gets muddy and then I put it back on. I get muddy, I get in the car gets muddy and so on. And I was constantly thinking, oh my God, I wish I had like 2 extra hands. And, I kind of searched the market to look for a product that would allow me to hang like anything pretty much anywhere. And I couldn't. And so I decided to invent an extra hand in the simplest form possible. Mm-hmm. And HeroClip is basically the result. And it is a fully functional carabiner that has a deployable hook. So the hook swings out and then it rotates. So you can hang your backpack on a tree branch. You can hang your purse on a table, or a door or a fence. And it's, just like your extra hands can do so many different things.
Right.
That is what I want HeroClip to be for you.
Yeah, that's great. And so just to describe it a little bit more, when you say deployable, basically what you're doing is it's a carabiner and then there's an extra piece that comes over that's just like that is the hanger, like it's almost like a coat hanger, like kind of the top of a coat hanger mm-hmm. that can sit over a tree branch, but it's got the little rubber end on it.
Exactly.
So it doesn't move if it's sitting on a desk or at a bar mm-hmm. or a restaurant, because I can't tell you the number of times that I'll go to a restaurant and my purse is either hanging so low on the back of the chair mm-hmm. that it's either almost hitting the floor or it doesn't, or like the back is rounded so it could fall off.
Exactly.
Yeah. But and there's never a little hook. Sometimes there's a hook at a bar underneath, but I'm preaching to the choir here. You know exactly what the problem
I know
is.
HeroClip's awesome. So
it is. Yeah, it really is. So many uses.
Yeah. And, I feel like the beauty of HeroClip, if I might say so myself, is that the hook portion nests onto the clip so that when you're done using it, it's very portable. So you can leave it hanging on your purse strap, backpack strap, and then or stick it in your purse.
Yep.
And it does come in 3 sizes. So depending on what you use it most for.
Yeah. And it's not much bigger than a carabiner.
Exactly.
And it weighs nothing too.
2 ounces.
Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you.
Well, kudos to you for this. I wouldn't know. I can't remember who it was. I did have someone on the podcast previously who I think it was Jean Thompson from Seattle Chocolates.
Oh, I love Jean.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, she is.
And I said to her, like, I wouldn't know the first thing about manufacturing. Like, where do you even start? Like her, of course, it was with chocolates. Like, mm-hmm. where would you even start? How did you even start when you thought, okay, I want to create this thing. I need a carabiner, but it needs to have these other parts on it. What's the first thing that you do?
Well, I mean, it's through lots and lots of errors and mistakes, and that's one of the reasons I wrote the book with my co-author Hilary Meyerson. But my background is not in manufacturing, it's not in product development. I used to be a professor at the University of Washington Business School, so I did know about business, but very little about manufacturing. And at the time I came up with this idea, I had 2 other startups going on. So I kept on telling myself, oh my God, you don't know anything about manufacturing. You don't know anything about product development. You have a kid, don't do it. And I just felt really compelled to do it. So I kind of had to figure it out on my own. And even like 5-6 years ago, I didn't know very many people who manufactured anything. I knew a ton of tech people, so I didn't really know where to go. But I did end up kind of meeting a product developer who could help me out with the basic design. And I ended up crowdfunding it. And I told myself, okay, if nobody backs it, then I'll know that nobody wants this. And, I'll just like go on to other things. But it did really well. And so
yeah, your goal was like 20,000 and you raised 70 or something like that?
Yeah,
Is that right?
we raised almost 80,000. And since then, we've done 2 additional crowdfunding campaigns. And in total, we've done about 400,000. So that told me that there was a need for this, and then I ended up working with a manufacturer overseas, and that was also a lot of trials and errors, just in terms of quality and things like that. But we finally had it dialed down, and the book is really what I learned through my own journey, and it's not just my experience, but the experiences of 14 other women who make physical products. And we decided to call it Be an InventHer because I really believe that women just have just amazing ideas because, even, this day and age, like women just do more. I know that to be a fact, no matter, how amazingly supportive your male partner might be, like women just do more. Like I know 100%, like, and because we do so much and juggle so much, we also solve a lot of problems. We have to come up with like hacks and my thought is, those hacks can be used by a lot more people than just you. And so we wanted to come up with a guide that in very easy to understand language, and I think is pretty an entertaining read on top of it all, to like show women how to get started, basically.
So the full title of the book is Be an InventHer, an Every Woman's Guide to Creating the Next Big Thing.
Yes.
Which is a great title, and I think it explains it exactly. Without giving away, like, of course, we want people to go buy the book. Whether you have an idea now or you don't, or I think I would imagine reading a book like that might get your creative juices flowing to such an extent that you think, well, that thing doesn't currently exist, but maybe I could be the one to make it. I think I would just imagine that would help like spur on that creativity. But without giving away too much, can you explain, like you said, kind of the first thing that you did the research, you discovered that there wasn't something out there like that. And then you had to find, did you say a developer or a designer?
I did.
To create it?
Mm-hmm.
So you sit down with somebody who actually is maybe the creative on it, and then what? Like if it doesn't exist, how do you find someone to make it or mass produce it? Maybe I can imagine creating a one-off couldn't be that difficult, but then going into production for it.
Yeah, so in our book, we have a chapter on each of those things. So, the first chapter might begin with, how do you know your idea has legs? Because we have ideas all the time, right? But assuming that you don't want to just have an expensive hobby, you might want to sell it or bring it to market. So we talk about that and some simple ways you can validate your idea. And then we also talk about how to find the product developer because, I kind of found my product developer by luck. I happened to be at a party because I didn't know any, so.
That's the way the universe works, though.
I guess so. I guess I was meant to do this. So how to find the product developer, how much they might cost. It's a very, like an open book sort of book. I talk about like what I paid for various things. And then we have a very pretty lengthy chapter on finding a manufacturer, both in the US and overseas. Questions you need to ask, some of the things you need to watch out for. We also talk about how to import goods, logistics. So, and then we talk about marketing and how to finance your business, but it's kind of a primer, like developing a product and bringing it to market. You just have to there's so many things involved, and each of these things probably you can find like 10,000 books on it, but ours is kind of an overview of everything that you'll have to think about as the product developer and entrepreneur. And then, depending on who you are, you can decide, oh, you know what? I really don't have any skills in like finance. And maybe that's what you need in a partner.
Yeah,
So,
that's what you outsource.
yeah. So that was the idea behind the book.
And that comes out on October 22nd, I think. Is
That's
that
correct.
right? Great. But it's available for pre-order, I noticed, on Amazon. So
yes, it is.
People can grab a copy now on that. So you had mentioned that you were a professor of business before you launched into this. How much of your business experience do you think you brought to the table? Because you said this is about manufacturing a product, and you had no experience in manufacturing, but how much of your business experience and your business background do you think you brought to the table in actually creating this?
Sure. So I was a professor of entrepreneurship specifically, and where it's, teaching and researching entrepreneurship is so different from doing it is that when I was an academic, a professor, I used to talk to entrepreneurs all the time. So for some of my research, I talked to a couple hundred. So I had good knowledge of kind of the breadth of experience, the many different ways entrepreneurship could happen. But then doing it myself, I felt like one advantage I had was that, some of the, business jargon and terms out there, I was very familiar with. Like I had seen like a zillion business plans where a lot of entrepreneurs want to start a business and they've never even seen one. And not that you always need one, but, I just was more familiar with the many parts of that are involved in the business. The other thing is that because I belong to the Foster School here, I already had a community I could reach out to. So again, they weren't in the manufacturing world, but I could reach out to them to see, hey, I think I want to raise some money from equity investors. So that was really helpful as well. But I mean, I tell you, like going from academia, where, academia is one of the most stable jobs in the world, especially if you're on tenure track. Going from that to just starting a business and just like not knowing whether this huge batch of inventory I just ordered would sit in my basement for like 10 years or if they would fly off the shelf. I mean, it's been very nerve-wracking, but also so enjoyable and so exciting.
Yeah. I do want to talk about that kind of that jumping off. But before we veer into that, I want to say something and maybe we can just discuss it a little bit. Like it's really easy for me to sit here and say, well, Mina, it was easy for you to create a business because you have a business background and you're working in entrepreneurship, right? You had access to all of this and you admit that you had seen a ton of business plans and you had, some real depth in terms of the contacts that you had. So I think on the surface, it's really easy for me or for a person to say, well, of course, that's easy for her. But I think the bigger point, and I talk about this in other realms too, is that we all have those. We all have an area of expertise, whether we realize it or not. And, maybe if this had been my idea and I wanted to do it and I wasn't a professor of business and didn't have access to entrepreneurs, maybe I have somebody in my family who is the designer, who could create the design. Or maybe I have somebody in the family who, works at a firm who creates some piece of this, and that I'd have access to some other part of the manufacturing or part of the business aspect of it. And so for anyone who's listening and saying the same thing that I might say is like, oh gosh, that it sounds easy because you have access to so much that I don't have access to. But the thing is, I think we all need to tap into our own resources, and we have resources whether we realize it or not. And just think about how we can utilize our own skills and our own background to create or pursue whatever it is that makes sense for that end. Am I making sense there?
You are totally making sense. And first of all, it was not easy. It's still not easy. But that's one of the reasons that we included many other women entrepreneurs and inventors in the book. And I think one of the things that we really want to highlight is that your business and your product can be created in so many different ways. And Beth, if you had come up with the HeroClip idea, it could look totally different. It could be like 100 times better, Who knows, right? And I feel like no matter what your background is, you have a unique history and unique, life trajectory such that you will make your mark on the product. I think if 10 people had the same kind of similar concept, and they produce the product, I think they would all be like slightly different just because of what past experiences and resources the different women tap into. Yeah, I mean, the 14 women in my book, they have done incredibly. As far as I know, I'm the only person with an academic background who taught at the business school. They're all doing very well. They all took a different path. So I think creating a product that people want can happen for anyone.
Are you concerned about knockoffs?
I am concerned, which is why I had decided to really, really put this out there, try to build a HeroClip name and try to have a point of view that we stand for. So we're all about like high quality, using premium goods, and we are about kind of empowering people. And we don't see our product as, some product you might find at like hardware store. We think that this is a product that can really enable you to do more of what you already do or more easily.
And you're in places already like REI. So it's a crossover. Not like I could see this in like we have a store here in West Seattle called Zamboanga. I don't know. You should check it out. They've gone more into like the clothing line, but they do gifts and they do all sorts of like fun and funky things. But I could totally see this in there, like a little boutique, definitely women's focused boutique kind of place. But then you've got the travel stores and you've got the REIs and the outdoor adventure folks.
And we're also at the Container Store. And we just got our first purchase order from Title IX, which is like one of my favorite stores. And we're going into Camping World. So it's a very, they're just like your hands. Your hands go with you when you go camping, when you travel, when you're being a mom, when you're being, everything you are, HeroClip can help you with. And that was my intention anyway. Like I am all about efficiency and reduced waste. And I just didn't want like a different product for every single thing I do or I am. And
well, I have two nieces. One just had a baby like 2 days ago, and the other one's having twins in a couple months. So I'm going to get these
totally.
for them because I could see it. I could see that could be their savior. It could be such a great thing for them.
Awesome.
So the product launched when?
So this is the second generation of this concept. The first generation launched in crowdfunding in 2015. And then it had a really funky name because I thought it looked good on paper. The name was Clipter with a Q, which nobody could pronounce. So we ended up rebranding about 2.5 years ago.
That's funny. When I read that, I read Q-Lipter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm one of those that that mispronounced it. But yeah, that is clever. So you rebranded, and then when you rebranded, did it like take off? Did it change? Did it really shift things?
It really did. I mean, it's easy to pronounce, and we are sold globally. So depending on who we sell to, you can also translate the word hero to whatever language you're selling in. And I think it made a huge difference. And that's when we decided to also invest in kind of like figuring out who we are and what kind of company we want to be in. What kind of packaging, how do we want our packaging to look so that it represents us well? So that kind of all happened with the name change.
With all of the colors and sizes that you have, how many SKUs do you have? Is that appropriate? Is that appropriate word, the SKU?
Totally.
Yeah, how many SKUs do you have?
So we have 27, 3 sizes, and 27 colors across the 3.
Yeah, man, that's great. Boy, I'm so excited for you because I do think it's such a cool thing.
Thank you.
How did you decide to then go on to write the book? Did you find it was kind of the same thing where there wasn't a resource for you and you thought, well, I'm gonna write the resource?
So the book happened kind of organically because, after my product came on the market, I would get a lot of emails and phone calls from friends of friends, friends of friends of friends who had an idea, they didn't know what to do. And I started kind of writing down the responses to their questions. And, partly it's out of laziness, right? I would just have this thing oh, you want to learn about prototyping? Here.
Copy and paste.
Exactly. And then I was working with my co-author, Hilary Meyerson. She is actually an amazing marketer, and she had helped me with a couple crowdfunding campaigns. And we were like, we should compile all this into a book. And so we did. And I love Hilary, and it was an opportunity for us to kind of spend time together and to learn from each other. So that's kind of how it happened. And we ended up writing a book proposal, which we had never done before. So it was, I love trying new things and just learning new skills. And luckily, Sasquatch decided to pick it up. So
our local publisher
yeah,
here.
yeah. So that's been really awesome.
Yeah. How long did it take you to work on the book?
Oh my God, we did it at breakneck speed. When they decided to take our book on, it was June of last year, and they said, okay, we'll release it in 2020. And I was like, what? That's so far away. Can't we release it in 2019? And they said, we've never done that so quickly. I'm like, we can do it. We can do it. So yeah, we signed our contract, I think June or July last year, and turned in our draft in January.
Oh my gosh, that is fast. How did you find the women that you have in the book, that are featured in the book?
So we actually reached out to women who had products we really liked.
Mm-hmm.
So,
just period.
Yeah.
That's how you did it.
And we thought all the products in there are products that are very relatable. It's not some esoteric product like two people in the world would use. It's products that I think every single reader of the book would find useful in their daily lives. Mm-hmm. So that's how we try to pick the products.
Right. So readers can connect with it. And
exactly.
Kind of get it.
And, they're mostly products that are not super technical. These are all ideas people had living their daily lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I think it's a local woman who actually created this. The mirror, it's the mirror that goes in the back of your car. I guess when you have kids. I don't have kids, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here. So when you put your child in the back seat of the car, don't you when they're super young, don't you put them in reverse?
Yes.
And then I think it's a local woman who created the mirror that goes in the back. So when you're looking, as the mom is looking in the rear view mirror.
Totally.
So yeah, that's a local person
something
too.
like that. I used to have those, and I didn't know it was locally created.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think she's on the east side. Yeah.
Oh, that's super. Yeah. So products like that.
Yeah. Where you think, where is this? Why isn't this available?
Totally. Yeah. So we didn't want a product that's some marine robot, you know, like that. We don't really need right now. These are all
super
items
practical.
you can practical items that you can afford to have in the house. You would find useful.
Mm-hmm. You really sound because you've got 2 kids, you've got the book coming out, and you're not one to linger over something and say, well, oh yeah, give us an extra year on the book.
Oh my God. No.
So how do you juggle everything? How do you juggle everything?
Well, first, I don't. A lot of balls get dropped. And, one thing interesting I noticed, I've done a lot of speaking on panels and stuff. And I usually get a question from a young woman, usually, who says, oh my God, how'd you do it all? And the thing is, nobody does it all, right? So there are sacrifices I've had to make, maybe we don't travel as much, or, you really begin to really prioritize what's important to you, who's important to you. And I have a lot of help. I have an awesome spouse who does a lot around the house, and he's also very supportive of my business. And as I mentioned, my parents live nearby. We also have a childcare provider who helps around the house as well. And I really think it takes a village. There's no way I could do anything without all these people in my life.
Mm-hmm. How do you let go of the fact that you are dropping balls? Like, how do you not beat yourself up about that?
I didn't say I didn't beat myself up. I occasionally do, especially around children. And I mean, I'll be very frank. I often feel guilty that I am, not going to every single PTA meeting. Occasionally, I've not been able to go to, like a Cub Scouts meeting. And, I tell myself every time I feel that guilt, and I tell myself that how involved the kids are in my business and in the book and the pride they feel, which they do. They both want to work for HeroClip when they grow up, and they love seeing their name in my book and the acknowledgments page. They appear twice, acknowledgments and dedication. So I think seeing those things and giving my kids the opportunity to see their mom do like cool things like that, and also trying new things. I feel like that's what I remind myself of every time I feel guilty for not going to their Cub Scouts meeting,
Does your husband go in your place, or does no one?
No, my husband will go, or we might take turns, or, sometimes our nanny goes. They're not neglected children, in case you're worried.
No, not at all. No, not at all. I was trying to envision it. I'm sure they're well taken care of. So I wasn't calling that into question at all. But I was just trying to envision it, because I can only imagine, like I have a husband, and already like I have the guilt of, like I travel a lot. I run a tour company that is mainly women only tours, and he can't go.
Right.
He can go on some of the trips, and he goes on the research trips with me. And if it's a co-ed trip, most of the time, often he will come on those tours. But still, there is that feeling of I pay extra special attention in the days leading up to a tour. Like, okay, I've got to make sure that everything's clean, and I've got instructions out on when the plants get watered and when this has to happen and when that happens, and don't forget that. And there is that kind of guilt, and that is with an adult. That's not even with the kids. And so I was only just trying to envision that it would be a really hard thing to do. Like, I think women are in a really difficult position of when they want to pursue something, or when they want to go on a vacation. Like I've had women on my tours who have young children at home. And in one case, the woman told me, like, well, my husband says, happy wife, happy life. So, go on your trip, go on your retreat, go do your thing, because when you come home, you're going to be a better person. But it's really hard for us to let go of that. I know that.
It is so true. And, as I mentioned, my husband is awesome. And he also has a startup, and, he isn't able to sometimes do the things he wants to do with our kids, especially, but he feels zero guilt. And I'm like, I wish, because I know I'm a good mom.
Yeah.
And I know that on weekends I really try to limit my work so I can do fun things with them and make the times count. So,
Do you think it's societal pressure? And I think there's two parts to that. I think there's societal pressure in terms of how we were brought up. And I think that there's societal pressure in terms of the subtleness, maybe from a school teacher or from one of your friends who also has kids, like, oh, Mina has to go to work. Like, she can't be here with the kids, at the PTA meeting, or she can't be here representing. But do you think a lot of that is
I really think so. And I mean, it's like, when I mentioned that on these panels, I would get asked all the time, how do you do it all? So I actually, being a former academic, I decided to do a survey. And I texted 10 male entrepreneurs who speak quite a bit on panels. And I was like, hey, does anyone like hear that you're a dad and then ask you, how do you do it all? Like, not a single one, because I'm a woman and a mom, I feel like the assumption is, like, how are you? I don't know. I think it's unfair to men too, because they're all great dads, but that part is just like ignored, and they're just seen as entrepreneurs, where I'm like a mom and an entrepreneur. And, I'll go to trade shows sometimes, and I'll get to chatting with people, and they'll be like, oh, who's taking care of your kids? And I'm like, my awesome husband is, who's taking care of yours, like, and so I think there's definitely this like societal aspect to it.
The fact that the question even comes up in the first place.
Totally. And I know for a fact that it doesn't come up for men, my male counterparts.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to something that you said earlier when you were just talking about the creation of it. It's like we do a lot. We're already juggling a lot. And I think that there is that understanding within the culture that we're the primary person at home, keeping things clean. I mean, this is all really stereotypical, but I think I think there is a lot of truth to it. The caretakers, of the home, of the kids.
Parents too, as they get older.
Yes. And just being able to handle all of those things, and then also having a job. So I think that the question is fair on one hand, but it's not fair to the guy who also may be the primary cook in the house,
Totally.
and is also doing a lot of things around the house.
Yeah, and I feel like, every time I hear the question, like, how do you do it all? Part of me is like, oh my God, I should be doing it all, but I'm not, And I feel like there's that component as well, where like it's a reminder that I'm not doing it all, but I should,
We have to come up with a better response for that.
Right?
I'm going to work on that.
Okay. You let me know.
I will. I will let you know. You're doing more than I am, so I'll give you that much.
Oh, please.
But no, really, it's I think it is an important topic. One of the things that I have people, I have an amazing life, and I'm super fortunate. And, from the outside, lots of people want my life. I love my life, so no complaints at all. But I think a lot of people say, oh my gosh, like you live the ideal life. It must be so great. You're always going and traveling. And I just say, yeah, come shadow me. Like, come shadow me for 2 days, like up at 5 o'clock, out for a run, a task list that's always 100, that's always got 100 things on it, juggling, like you'll see here, I'm leaving for Ireland in a couple of days. I've got like all my stuff lined up for Ireland. And at the same time, when I come back from Ireland, I'm home for like 4 days, and then I'm off on another trip. So I've got like 2 piles of stuff like for the next trip. And it's like, I know, first world problems, what could be worse? But it's a lot of juggling, and there's stress involved in that too, and it's not all perfect, jet lag and everything else.
And you have to herd all these people who are in your group.
Yes,
and
I do.
Yeah,
I do. It's you know what? I should edit all that out. I won't, but because I feel like I'm complaining about it. But the whole idea is that there is a lot of hard work that goes into what you're doing, what I'm doing. And I think if anybody shadowed it, they'd be like, oh my God, like, how do you juggle it all? So it's a fair question. That's my whole point, is that in a way, it's a fair question.
You're right. Maybe I've been overly harsh.
Well, I guess it depends on who it's coming from too,
Yeah.
But I think it's a fair question to ask back to either a male interviewer or a male person on the panel.
Right?
Say, well, I don't know. Let's hear how he does it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I'm totally gonna do that.
I'd rather know how you handle it all. Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Anyway, well, what is a typical day like for you? I mentioned I'm up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. But what's a typical day for you?
So for me, I have 2 kids who go to 2 different schools. So, and their schools start at different times, which is kind of a mixed blessing. But my husband and I divide and conquer. So he makes breakfast and takes one of the kids to school. I take the other one. And I usually get up at 6 and do some email checking, figure out what's going on in the day. And then after dropping my son off, I go into my office, and I have a very small team, but they're a very awesome, dedicated, talented team.
Do you have an office outside of your house or a home office?
We have an office outside the house.
And does does your whole team meet there?
Yes, we do have one person who works remotely from Bend, Oregon. So she comes in half the month, and half the month she's there.
Lucky
she just
her.
can't. Yeah, she just can't leave Bend, and it's too nice.
Yeah.
And then I go through phases with this, but I am a big CrossFit like fan. And before my kids and before my business, I used to go 5 times a week, but now I try to like sneak out for an hour at noon. And then, I mean, the thing about startups is every day is different. And, we talked about juggling. It is a lot to juggle, but I love it because one day I might be working on product development. The next day I'm shooting a video for, our website. And then, or I could be, working on like projections. And these are all things that I really enjoy. I don't think I could ever have a job where I did like one thing like all day, like a bookkeeper. And I really admire people who can.
Did you find that when you were teaching that every day was different also?
I didn't so much. And, I have so many good things to say about the University of Washington and loved meeting all the students there. But I was like bored, frankly. And I just felt like it was, I wanted something that was faster paced. And yeah.
Enough said. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And now I have this like exciting startup that is not always, rainbows and roses, granted, but I've been doing this for several years now and I still love what I do. And I think one of the reasons is that I get to work with all kinds of different people.
Do you want to talk about that transition from since you brought up working as a professor and kind of that environment is very different, and it may be for a lot of people like that they really enjoy it, but it sounds like it just wasn't up your alley. How long were you a professor?
I was a professor at the UW for 5 years, and I actually did a 1-year stint at Stanford as well, and
teaching there as well. You're saying
teaching research. I was a visiting faculty fellow, and both institutions are amazing, and that's when I decided that it was the occupation, not the school, because like two awesome schools with great colleagues and students, and I just didn't feel totally fulfilled.
What did you hope to get out of a career as a professor? Like you went to school. So here, for one thing, you had lived in all these amazing destinations, like all these great places, and then you came to Seattle to go to the UW. Is that right?
Yeah. So I got my doctorate in Michigan, and then I took a job at the University of Washington. And the reason I decided to go into academia was because I wanted to see how startups worked, because after graduating from college, I went to work for a little company. I was employee number 2, and it was just like frantic and hectic all the time. And I was like, oh my God. But somehow we got things done. And, I was only like 21 at the time, but I felt like it was very, very interesting and I wanted to learn more. And that's why I went into academia and I did my research in Silicon Valley. And I looked at immigrant entrepreneurs, which I am one as well. And I had all these, interesting findings. And this is where the negative part comes in. I had to turn it into an academic paper, which, I just remember a friend of mine picked up my academic paper, read it, and he said, oh my God. I was like, what? Like, did you love it? He's like, I had no idea you could be so boring. And I was like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. Like, I took all this like fascinating stories from like 200 entrepreneurs and turned it into 30 pages of academic jargon. And that is what I was kind of expected to do. And that just didn't feel right to me. And like I said, I had opportunities at great places. And
when did that paper, like what part of your career did that paper fall into? Was that while you were still going for your doctorate, or was that?
No, this was after I became
when
faculty.
You were teaching.
Yeah. And and I think, there are academics who really love it. They're contributing knowledge and they're passionate about it. And that's all great. And I just felt like it wasn't right for me. And even after knowing that it wasn't right for me, it was not easy to leave. It was just a huge leap of faith. It is very difficult to get an academic job. Once you leave, it's almost impossible to come back. My colleagues and mentors and advisors were like, come on, Mina, just like suck it up. You can have a job for life. there was enormous pressure for me to stay, but in the end, I decided to take that leap.
How long was the process from when, maybe it was when that paper came out and your friend said, "Oh my God, you're so boring," or this paper is so boring. How long was that process from, "Oh, this doesn't quite feel right and I'm out of here"?
I think it really congealed in my mind when I went to the other institution, and I realized, it's not just
It's
the
not
school.
the UW.
Yeah, it's not the school. It's just the field. And I also felt like I could contribute more as an entrepreneur or doing something else. Just because I feel like if you're not super passionate about something, it kind of shows.
When did that time at Stanford come in? Like, when did that fall in? Because you said you were at the UW for 5 years.
Yeah, I went to Stanford for 1 year, came back and gave notice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So you never really went back to the UW.
I did for 1 year. In academia, you give notice a year in advance because there's only one hiring season.
Yeah.
So,
was that super tough to give your notice, or were you pretty solid at that point and just like that? Yeah, I got to get out of here.
I decided to say that I got to get out of here situation, and it wasn't super hard for me, and I felt like it was the right thing to do because the department is awesome, and I knew that there are lots of other people who would love to be there. In academia, they only hire like 1 or 2 people a year, and somebody has to retire for there to be an opening. So I felt like I was doing the right thing, and again, I had a lot of support from my spouse, who just really encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do. And I was like, but I'm not going to have any income. He's like, you're going to have income. Like, he had total faith in me. And for that, I'll always be grateful.
Did the HeroClip come during that year that you decided to leave? Or it came after? Because you said you had left, had a child, and then...
Yes.
Bing.
However, I had 2 other startups I was a part of at the time, and one of them they're all completely different. And one of them was an online business based on my wedding experience, a very wasteful industry. And God, that's a totally other story. But we launched it, and I had some partnership issues, and the product got good reviews, but I just felt like I didn't want to work with this person anymore. So we closed it down. And the other one, I was helping my husband start his business. So I was the COO and helped him with that. And then when HeroClip launched, I kind of found somebody to replace me for my husband.
So you'd been out of your position at the UW when HeroClip launched. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, when you think about Mina at the UW, physically and mentally / emotionally, can you just feel and picture a completely different person than who you are now? Like, do you like feel it in your body, and do you just feel emotionally like freer? Like uplifted?
Totally. And actually, just this past Friday, I had drinks with a close friend of mine. She and I were grad students at the same time. We got hired in the same year at the University of Washington, and she is still an academic, and she loves it. But she told me how, like, I just seem like so much happier, and I am doing exactly what I was meant to be doing. So, and I really feel that way. And I just feel like, for a while, I was like, oh my God, I wasted all this time getting a doctorate and, being an academic when I knew that I didn't love it. But I feel like this is where, those 10 years of being a doctoral student and being an academic, and I feel like I took the stuff I learned from those years and I'm applying it to my business. And it's not just I know all these things about business, but, like the discipline and the ability to work alone, ability to work in you have to really self-motivate. Nobody's going to tell you what to do, when to do it. You just have to do that on your own. And I feel like it all kind of like culminated in the book where I was able to kind of draw from my academic experience as well as my entrepreneurial experience.
Well, when it's something that you believe in, then you can work alone and you can spend
Right.
14 hours a day kind
Totally.
of thinking about it and doing it and living it and trying to figure everything out.
Absolutely.
And if you had, look, the HeroClip wouldn't have come about 10 years ago. You know, if you knew from the beginning that you wanted to work, you know, as an entrepreneur or have a company, it would be another product. It would be something
Totally.
else. And maybe your heart wouldn't have been in it, you know, quite the same way. Maybe it would have been somebody else's company that you were working with and this
Right.
wouldn't happen. So, I mean, things happen, just they unfold the way they're supposed to unfold.
I agree completely. Life is so interesting.
It is. And I think if you're patient about allowing something to unfold, the right thing appears. Like, I think that happens. But you have to be open to it.
Totally.
And,
I was
you
just
know,
going to add that.
Yeah.
You just have to be open to it. And sometimes, take that leap like we were talking about.
Yeah. And not killing yourself at something that you hate, that's
Right.
soul crushing.
Right.
Because I think a lot of us do that, you know, for different reasons.
I can name 10 people right now
Yeah.
who, yeah.
I know. It's sad. And you know what? Sometimes we have to do it because for financial reasons,
Totally.
you know, or because we have insurance, you know, that covers the kids and the family or something.
Agree completely.
You know, but there's ways. And I just talked about this on a different episode, but maybe you're familiar with him also, Chris Gillaboo. He lives down in Portland. He has a book and a podcast called Side Hustle. And it's some people who are doing something on the side just because that is what fulfills them. But sometimes it launches into a product or it launches into a company that is no longer a side hustle. It's actually their main income.
Totally. And, one of the things we talk about in the book is, we talked about taking that leap of faith, but also you have to be pragmatic, right? You still have responsibilities, like no matter what age you are, kids, no kids, you still have to support yourself. So one of the things we talk about is when should you quit your day job? So I agree.
What would you say, and you probably talk about this some in the book too, but what would you say to someone, like, I guess maybe very pointedly, like when do you quit your day job? How does a person know, how do they tap into what's right? And, when the process needs to change, or when the life needs to change and you need to change your own process to find a different path?
So, one of the things that we talk about in the book is about, we have an entire chapter on just your life and how your business or product fits into it. And for everybody, it's different, right? If you are a 20-year-old like living in your parents' home, you're going to have very different expectations and needs than, somebody like me with 2 kids and a spouse. So obviously you'll have to make your own decision. But one of the things we try to do is give women with product idea very easy steps that they can take to see if this is right for them. Because we don't want to be like, okay, you have to go to this like accelerator program for 12 weeks and like leave your kids. The first thing we ask people to do is like talk to 5 people. Like they can be your roommates, your family. So rather than thinking about this as like this huge decision that you have to spend, months thinking about, we try to provide steps that you can easily take even today.
What do you think the biggest stumbling block is? Like it's easy to say that, like, oh, if you have an idea, just kind of go out there and, talk it up a little bit and see what the response is. But I think a lot of times we're just afraid to speak the words and afraid to consider the possibilities. Like, do you find that? I don't know if do you address that in your book?
We actually do. And we put together like a paragraph of, we talk about how scary it is, showing your product, which is basically your baby, to somebody and how they might not respond the way you want them to. And we talk about like how to deal with that. We talk about what you can say to the person. But one of the things, you asked, what are some of the reasons people don't take that first step? And one of the reasons this book came about was because I did a survey of about 200 women again, being an academic, I told you it wasn't all a waste. I did a 4-question survey of women in the Puget Sound area because I noticed that I'd be at a play date with my kid, and every single time one of the moms would be like, oh my God, somebody should invent this thing, or this product would be perfect if it had XYZ. And I was kind of like, you guys go do it. And they're like, oh, no, whatever. So I was like, oh my God, is it just my friends, or do moms like have ideas all the time? So I did a survey of nearly 200 women, and I found that 90% of these moms I served, and they were all moms, had at least one product idea. And guess what the percentage was for anybody who did anything with it?
2%, 0%. Yeah.
And then I had asked, why is that if you hadn't done anything with it? And, it's not very surprising. They, the self-confidence aspect, they don't have the time, they don't have the money, they don't know what step to take initially. And, that's what the book is for. So very small steps. There are some businesses out there that are like, send us your idea and $15,000 and we'll tell you if it's good. We don't want that. Go ask your 5 friends first. And you know what? By the time you're done asking them, you might not even want to do the idea. Who knows?
You want to know something really funny? So we are an hour in
oh my goodness.
To this conversation. Here's the crazy thing. I have a product idea.
Awesome.
that I've been talking about to one person, my husband, for probably 2 years. And he's the technology guy. And I keep waiting for him to figure it out. Isn't that funny? Like that right there is the interesting bit. Mm-hmm. And then it was about like 2 months ago, I thought, why am I waiting for him to figure it out? Like he doesn't understand the value. It has to do with running, and he's not a runner. So he doesn't understand the value of it, but I keep talking about it. And I realized that a couple months ago. I thought, like what's holding you back? Like, why aren't you just doing it? And one of it is I don't have the connections. I don't have the resources. Like, I don't know where to start.
Now you have me.
I know. I'm going to get the book, and I'm going to start checking it out. And it's funny because just recently I thought, you really need to start looking into it yourself and seeing and testing some things out on your own just to see how possible this thing is. I think it's brilliant, and I think it could be created and sold to a bigger company,
totally.
and used widely. Like, I don't think that I could take it to market, necessarily like in a big way, because it's a little bit more specialized, which I will tell you offline about it. But anyway, I'm sitting here talking to you, and I was like, oh my God, I have an idea that I'm not following through. Isn't that funny? And yeah, okay.
And, that happens a lot. And like you said, I mean, think of all the other runners who would benefit. Mm-hmm. It's not just about you and your idea, but it's about like helping all those people as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you guys out there, like wait till this big thing hits the market. Oh my God. I read an article. I can't remember if it was a podcast that you had done, but it was focused on kind of the motherhood aspect of inventing. Does that tie in directly with what you were saying before, just about how we're doing so much, and we're constantly thinking of better ways to do things? Like we're the test cases.
Absolutely.
But then we're not following through on it. Gosh darn it! Like that's the problem, isn't it?
It is, but women have so much. Moms and women have so much going on already. The last thing I want to do is put something else on, our plate, right? By saying, you have those ideas, you have to bring it to market. Our main thing is that it makes me, so here's another statistic. So I read that 85% of household decisions are made by women. So my thought is, wouldn't it be awesome if women are benefiting from those purchases that they make anyway? So one of my goals with the book and just, advocating for women inventors and entrepreneurs in general is to get more women into the ecosystem where we already know we're buying a ton of stuff. So let's also, see if we can benefit financially from selling goods because we made them.
Do you mean trying to find companies and purchasing from companies that are women owned. Is that what you mean? Or do you just mean encouraging more women to create the products so that we're benefiting from that aspect?
I meant the latter.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's put products out there and so that we can reap the profit, not some like large corporation somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I have actually personally started trying to support more women-owned businesses, and there are just more and more of them, and I just feel like it's awesome.
Yeah, when I make my chocolate purchases, and I make a lot, I give them a lot as gifts. Like especially when I'm traveling somewhere, I always bring Seattle chocolates.
Me too.
And I was like, and I love the fact that it's women owned,
Absolutely.
a woman owned company,
and she's amazing.
Yeah, she's neat lady. You had mentioned briefly we spoke like prior to sitting down and recording. We talked about something, the fact that you had adopted one of your children, your second child?
Exactly.
Right. So your 6-year-old. Can you talk about that process and the thinking behind that?
Sure. And
because that's also a leap of faith.
Yes, exactly. And, talking to you actually has been very beneficial to me in making sense of all my decisions. They're not all random. So my daughter, my first child, Kai, my son, was a biological child, and we decided to adopt the second one for a number of different reasons. One of them was that I really wanted a girl. Hey, I'll just be honest. And there was that, but also so I don't know if I mentioned this, but my doctorate is actually, I have a dual doctorate in sociology and business. So on the sociology side, I studied a lot of like inequality and just socioeconomic differences and the differences in opportunities between people of various races and ethnicities. So we actually wanted to do our part in giving opportunities to a child who might not have those opportunities. So that was another reason. And the third reason is that my husband and his sister are both adopted. And they were adopted, at a time where, I remember my husband telling me that he had some kind of an ailment and the adoption agency just told his parents to return him, like as if he's like something. And
was that here in the U.S.?
It was here in the U.S. in Gig Harbor. And he is so eternally grateful for his parents for just giving him
American born. I guess that's
born,
more, American born. Uh-huh.
Blonde, blue-eyed, because he also wanted to kind of pay it forward as well. So those were all the reasons we had decided to adopt, and we ended up adopting my daughter. She was 2 days old. She is from LA. She's half African American, half Latina. So we have a very rainbow-like household.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And so, at around the same time we were adopting, we had a couple other sets of friends who were trying to have a second child or their first child. And we were like, well, we are going to adopt, have you guys thought about it? And several of them said, well, yes, but we don't want to because of the unknown. Like we don't know about like their genetics or family health history. And we did think about that a little bit, but again, even with your biological kids, you just never know. Life is so strange and weird at times.
Well, it does seem like, and the reason why I asked about your husband, if he was American born, it does seem like, just based on some stories that I've heard, that children who are born in other countries, sometimes those adoption agencies aren't quite truthful about the health of a child. And it seems like the agencies in the U.S. just kind of have to be. There's more accountability,
right,
at least. So I would imagine that maybe with your adoption, there would be a little bit more of assurance with your daughter, having been born in L.A., in the U.S., that there might be a little bit more accountability in terms of her health and genetics.
Well, I mean, it's hard to tell because there is not a ton of information on the biological parents. And, maybe we were really naive, maybe we still are, but we just decided to take things as they come up. And we knew that we could be good parents to her. So, we decided to...
all healthy? Any issues?
No, just some minor issues like eczema, like stuff like that. But so far so good. And maybe she will have, maybe there will come a time where we discover like health issues or anything like that, and we'll just deal with it like we would deal with our biological kid, or with us.
Yeah, yeah, and anything could be environmental too. Like
Totally.
you don't know
There are so many unknowns.
what's gonna come up. You talked about, well, you said you were a rainbow family, but also just giving an opportunity to someone, your daughter, who wouldn't normally have that kind of an opportunity. And just kind of thinking about, like you mentioned, that you'll be on a panel, like you're a woman on a panel, and I don't think you said that was unique, that everybody else on a panel was necessarily male, but you are Korean, of Korean descent. Do you notice being treated differently, either as a woman or Korean born, being recognized as an Asian? Do you ever get that sense that things are different for you?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I've been like Korean my whole life, right? So I've never been treated any other way. So I can only compare with experiences that were shared with me. And one thing I think I can really detect on my own is that when a woman entrepreneur is out there raising money, like fundraising from equity investors or whatnot, I do feel like they are grilled more, as in like they have to show better performance to get any kind of like attention and positive feedback, as opposed to some male entrepreneurs who might say, oh, we are going to get there. Like, so what I have noticed from just watching all these pitches is like men can say, oh my God, we have this like, it's awesome things are going to happen. Whereas women have to say awesome things have happened, and I don't know where that comes from. And I know that not necessarily me, but actually in our book, there's a story about a woman who was told by investors, hey, you need to get a male co-founder. And I was like, what? That is just so crazy in Seattle, in 2018 or 19. But I know that happens, and I feel like I haven't personally experienced that level of blatant sexism or racism, but I know that it is out there.
Do you have much experience with like VC and talking to or talking to VC funders, or talking to entrepreneurs who are looking for funding based in the Bay Area? Like, do you have a comparison between Seattle and the Bay Area?
So I do have outside investors. They're mainly in the Seattle area, but as I mentioned before, I did my research in Silicon Valley. So I had met with a lot of investors and VCs over there, and I do not like see a discernible difference, but I also wasn't raising money in Silicon Valley, so I'm not really sure.
Different circumstances. I was just curious whether there was a different vibe about it, or a different response from people about it, like in the Bay Area. It's funny, you said before, like, you don't know because you've always been Korean.
Yeah.
It wasn't a change. I think the same thing about being a woman. And I just think I'm me. Like, I don't know that I'm treated differently, or I don't know if I'm treated differently because I'm a woman, in what I do. Like, I think that there are fewer women-owned tour companies than there are male tour companies. But I don't know about being treated differently by anybody, because I don't know. I'm just
You've been
me.
a woman.
Yeah, I've just been a woman. I had somebody years ago when I have a guidebook series under the brand Wanderlust and Lipstick, and I did an interview with the New York Times many years ago, like 10 years ago, when the book first came out. And there were like 200 comments, and it was a fairly innocuous interview, like just some adventurous stuff I had done and that sort of thing. And there was somebody in the comments who accused me of like wanting to be male so that I was treated differently when I traveled, like, and I just thought, are you kidding me? Like, that thought never crossed my mind, that it just seems so ridiculous to me that somebody would assert that. And I'll just never forget that. I'm like, like there was nothing that I said that would have given that indication for one thing. So she was just off her rocker. But I just remember thinking like that thought has never crossed my mind before, that I would be safer or that I would have special privilege as a male, because I think there are things that I can do as a female that males can't do. Like I can go in the kitchen of, of someone's home in Morocco or in Vietnam where the guy can't, doesn't necessarily, he's not really invited in. It's just a different experience. But that was the first time that I realized that there were these differences, like, oh, I guess maybe I am treated differently than a male. I just never looked at it that way. And of course, now with the Me Too movement, I see things so differently, but to me, I'm just doing what I do, and I don't think about anything other, I don't think anything beyond that. It's just me doing stuff.
But I have noticed, like at a much more innocuous level than, all the things we discovered from the Me Too movement, is that, in the entrepreneurial community, there are a lot of non-business activities that can lead to business deals. And poker, for example, right? People play poker until like 3 a.m. They're all entrepreneurs, investors, whatever. And it's not that women aren't invited to those events. It's just that, like, as we talked about, women do more. No woman, especially a mom, would dream of staying out until 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So I feel like those are very like subtle ways in which, men and women entrepreneurs might have different opportunities, because, during the poker game, who knows, a lot of things could happen. Mm-hmm. And I know that also things like that happen at the workplace as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I spoke to a woman for the podcast who worked in the financial industry. And she said she was expected to go out and go drinking with the boys, go drinking with the clients and go drinking with her, her coworkers. And it was okay, like in the beginning of her career. And then she had just some things had changed for her and she no longer wanted to do that. And she just realized that she started losing clients because of it.
Totally.
She wasn't playing the game. And I've heard that from other people as well, that they might go travel, they go out of town on business and just be expected after the conference or the trade show to go out drinking with the boys. And I'm like, well, just don't do it. Order a club soda. Oh, no, you can't do that. You've got to play. Yeah, it's really too bad.
You got to do the shots.
Yeah, you do have to do the shots. Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate the fact that I work from home and I'm not in that kind of environment, But that's too bad. But you know what? That's why we start our own businesses.
Totally. And,
have control over that.
And I only started listening to podcasts about like 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think it's so awesome that you do this, so that people know they're not the only one going through like X, Y, or Z, and just learn from just all different walks of women, I guess.
Right. And that's the reason why I started the podcast, was because I listened to so many of them and I realized, like, where are the women? Like, not only am I listening to a lot of male hosts, that's one thing, because I like the long form conversations, and I don't know any other women who are doing kind of the longer form. It's all 20 minutes, like, oh, let's get like a kind of a quick hit. And that's just not of interest to me. But I just realized that women are just a small percentage of the conversations. And I thought, well, maybe they aren't doing as much, and like, that was my thought, like, well, maybe they just can't find an expert in that field. And then I just thought, like, oh, that's just bullshit.
Yeah.
There's lots of women out there doing really cool stuff in every field. Now, what I have found is that not all of them want to chat, because either I'm just having a hard time getting them on my own podcast for whatever reason. I mean, then that's totally fine. But I just think that there are some times where women don't want to chat. They downplay what it is that they're doing, and they don't think it's worthy of talking about. Mm-hmm. And that makes me really sad, because I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You're doing like the coolest thing.
Right?
Let's just sit down and talk about it. And oh no, it's like,
I can totally see that. Yeah.
Really?
Women like downplay, not me. Like, I do my own horn, but but I have seen a lot of women just being like, oh, I'm only at this or I'm only at that. I don't know all of that, which makes me sad too.
Yeah, it's too bad. We need to get more stories out there.
Totally.
Anything else you want to cover that we haven't chatted about? I feel like
this has been so much fun. I just want to hang out.
I know. I really love your story. I love the fact, like, I think the big takeaway here is that you were in a job and, really, like, I know you were on, like, you were on your own academic route. Like, you were on your own path before you became a professor. And to me, it doesn't seem like you were in your position for a super long time before you bowed out. Like, it feels like you gave it a good, hearty try and just realized, like, okay, so maybe the first year I'm getting used to it. The second year.
That is exactly what happened.
Yeah, you get into the second year and you think, well, I thought it was going to be different this year. And then it's not. And then you start being not happy with it. And then you go somewhere else because it starts to unravel a little bit. But you didn't stick it out, even though you had peer pressure to do it. And you took a big leap, to go into something else. And so, like, that, I think that for listeners, I think that's a really big takeaway, is that you didn't just do something because there was good money in it or because it was a stable job or you were looking for tenure or whatever. You just pulled yourself out of it and then something else opened up because of that.
Absolutely. And I would not say it was an easy transition. I'm not going to say it was, not scary, but I am just really happy I did.
What were you scared of?
Well, not having an income, I had savings, but I had never had a period in my life where, as an adult, where I didn't make my own money. And I didn't know which of the businesses I was involved in would take off. And I just felt like I didn't know who I was. What am I going to call myself? If, you go to a party, they're like, what do you do? Oh, I just quit my job. And, it just it was just awkward. But kind of looking back now, it's hard for me to imagine being at that awkward stage because it just seems so right to me right now.
Isn't that funny that we care so much? We have future conversations that never take place. Like, what am I going to say when someone asks me at this dinner party that I'm not really going to anyway? It's like you kind of make stuff up, But I guess it's probably good to have a story. Like, I think so. I don't drink very much. Like, I have maybe a glass of champagne a couple times a year.
Wow.
And I know there's a long story behind that. But I don't drink very much. And it's evolved. I used to drink more. And as I was like, kind of like, you know what? I don't really even like this. I found that if I go to a dinner party or I go to a party, I have to have kind of a story to tell people so that they understand. Like,
why you're not drinking.
Right. And so now it's kind of like, and so if you put it into some context that people understand, then they just like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. So now it's just like, oh, I'm training for a marathon. And so years ago, that was a really easy thing for me to say, like, oh yeah, no, I'm just training for a marathon. So it's like, I have to get up and run in the morning. And that like makes sense to people. So no matter what it is that you're doing, whether it's in transition between jobs or you don't really know what you're doing or you're trying to figure it out, if you can have some sort of a story to tell people in whatever that situation is, and it might be a different story in every situation, but if you can have something that makes sense to people that you can still be proud of,
that's really interesting. Actually, the alcohol thing, because, I like my wines, but sometimes I don't feel like having any. And then people think all kinds of things. Like,
oh, yeah. Like, oh, you're in the program, or she's an alcoholic, so
or
she's
like,
not
are you
drinking.
pregnant? Or,
yeah, of course there's that.
There's that. So now I'm going to use a training thing.
Yeah.
And start actually training.
Well, yeah. Well, you could say, you know what? I've got a really big CrossFit workout planned tomorrow with my trainer. So, but of course, anybody who's listening to this is going to call bullshit on you. But yeah, I just think, like I said, no matter what it is, if it's like I'm weird and like to a lot of people, I'm weird in so many ways because I'm mostly vegan. So I've been vegetarian for a really long time. So, I have all these diet restrictions and, and then just really not drinking and, whatever, just all this, like all these quirkiness things about it. So if you can just come up with some kind of a story that
is a really good tip.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's my pro tip for being weird. Anyway, anything else that we should chat about?
This has been so enjoyable. Thank you for letting me talk about like everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And
I'm so excited. I'm bringing my HeroClips
yes,
to Ireland with me. I will.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
awesome. Yeah,
do you have like an Instagram account where people can send in photos?
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'll do that.
Awesome.
I'll do some really. Maybe I'll hang myself off the Blarney Stone or something.
No,
not like that.
No humans. No humans.
No, I'll hang something off the. I'll figure some way to hang something off of something iconic in.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
In Ireland,
yeah.
Like at the Guinness Guinness storehouse, their big place there.
The Guinness you're not going to drink.
The Guinness that I won't drink. No, that's a whole nother story. I haven't had a beer since 1993.
Wow.
Yeah, so I know that's always a good story. That'll have to be for another time, though. Let's see. I end these conversations by asking the guest, before we finish up here, I ask the guest what it means to you to be bold.
I think it came up a couple times already. I think it means taking that leap of faith without full information, which you just can't get or expect to get 100% data on anything. And it takes confidence in yourself and all the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what being bold means to me.
Yeah, without having all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think that is really key. Taking the leap. Yeah. Just figuring it out.
Yeah. And having the confidence you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for that. And then where can people find you and or HeroClips?
You can find HeroClip at myheroclip.com. We're also at a number of stores and Amazon, of course, the big giant. So yeah, check us out.
And online, you're on Instagram?
We are on Instagram. Our tag is HeroClip. Mm-hmm. And then I'd also love it if you guys checked out our book, which is on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book again is Be an InventHer, and Every Woman's Guide to Creating the Next Big Thing. That is available October 22nd, but is available for pre-order if this does go live before then. Otherwise, just go order the book, and then runners out there can buy my product.
Totally. I can't wait.
Which will go into development on October 23rd after I read the book, after it becomes available. Mina, thanks so much. Really, I so appreciate your time, and I'm so glad that we got connected and that I found your product, and found you, and you came to me, and it's all just perfect and great. I'm excited.
Thank you so much for
having me. So
me.
excited for you. Yeah, thanks. I'm dying to know how many of you out there have ideas that you just haven't pursued. Maybe this conversation was just the thing you needed to encourage you to figure out how to pursue something, this brilliant idea that you've got. You don't have to tell me what it is, but if you do have ideas, I'd be curious to know. Just send me a note at beth@shesboldpodcast.com and just drop me a line. Let me know, I've got this idea. Maybe I've got some inspiration now to follow it. As always, for links to all the things we chatted about in this episode, go to shesboldpodcast.com/episodes, and there you will find the show notes for this and all of my other conversations. You can also find those links and show notes in whatever podcast app it is you're using to listen to this. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing all of these uplifting stories, go to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. Patreon supporters become part of our private Facebook group and get access to bonus content, which is usually in the form of a question I ask the guest. And that's for as little as $2 a month. You can join our community. Now, in the case of Mina, I asked her about a very special name that she had as I was doing some research about her. I came upon a name of a business, and I asked her about that. So she goes into some detail, kind of behind the scenes detail about some work that she's done with her business. Don't forget to check out my tours at wandertours.com. Ireland, Morocco, wherever it is, Papua New Guinea, wherever it is you'd like to go, just let me know. You can find that at wandertours.com. It's WANDER tours.com. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm WanderGal on Instagram. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.